Hey, I'm Eric, I'm the explorer.
I'm Phil, I'm the folklorist.
And together we are setting out across the Empire State to explore the haunts and legends of New York.
In the Adirondack foothills north of Utica lies Starr Hill. Since the early 1800s, a strange ghost-like image has met travelers along the remote route. Some say it's the ghost of the infamous Witch Doctor of Steuben, a healer who may have dabbled in the darker arts. We go in search of the doctor's grave and explore the legend of the ghost of Starr Hill.
Well, Phil, standing here on the outskirts of a cemetery on a stormy evening, how apropos to be telling one of Central New York's most endearing ghost stories. You're going to tell me more about a story I've only heard a little bit about, the ghost of Starr Hill Road.
Yes, you think of it as the ghost of Starr Hill Road, but local residents actually think of him as the Witch Doctor of Steuben.
Really?
Yes.
And here at the cemetery here in Steuben, he's actually back there?
Yep. But his spirit may not be.
Let's go find his grave and tell his story.
Kathy, thank you for meeting with us out here. And I've heard the story of the legend of Dr. Roberts a few times. Eric doesn't know who he is.
I would love to hear about what were you just saying? The Witch Doctor of Remsen?
Steuben, yes, that's what he was noted as, and he never told anyone otherwise. And he wasn't a churchgoer, but I know deep down that he had his own belief, and he was very well read. But it was true that he liked the occult, and he read a lot about the occult. So you don't know if some of his cures might have been his little potions that he made or not. But the story I'm going to read to you now is about when Dr. Daniel Roberts passed away, and this might give credit to the ghost up on Starr Hill. So it might sound a little interesting. With a sigh, he turned his horse's head and started down the hill. He had gone but a little when a rabbit darted suddenly out of the thick undergrowth directly in front of the animal. The frightened creature leaped aside, and Daniel, taken unaware, was tossed into a swampy bank of Steuben Creek as the horse dashed wildly down the hill. Daniel lay where he had fallen, his ears filled with a medley of sounds, the splash of water, echo of hoofbeats, rustle of tall grasses and falling stones, then silence and pain. The sun was sending its last rays over the meadowlands when he heard cows lowing in the pasture. Someone would be coming soon to herd them for milking. Perhaps they would find him, for he could not move. Jane, in the meantime, preparing supper, listened anxiously for the familiar clop-clop of horses' hooves. But it did not come, although the sun had set beyond the autumn fields. She looked at the pattern of stones in the orchard and heard the unanswered call of a bird. Why did not Daniel come? Something was wrong. He needed her. He felt it as clearly as though he had called her. She was still standing in the doorway, peering across the fields, when her husband's horse trotted riderless into the yard. It was Evan Evans who found Daniel and brought him home. On a feather bed, they had placed him to ease the jolting of the wagon, and there he lay in intense pain of internal injuries. A great weariness flooded him as thoughts crowded through his mind in endless review. Sick people in wagons, on horses, on they came, old men, old women, in shawls and leading little children. They seemed to pour out of a vast wilderness. As each shadowy figure passed, it took with it some of his inner strength, and he grew gradually weaker. Yet they kept crowding past him, and he had given all he had to them. He felt cold now, and the shadowy people were slipping away. He could do no more for them. Now he felt that he could sleep for a little while. Something went from the hills when Dr. Roberts died on that warm September day in 1820.
And here he lies?
Here he lies.
His tombstone right there. Mm-hmm. It's hard to read, but...
Well, I was going to say...
Daniel Roberts.
If this is from 1820, we're talking about nearly 2 centuries.
That's right.
And that's his wife next to him.
195 years.
Yes, and his wife Jane carried on the practice after he passed on. And one of the stories that I also read in one of the books I have was that when she passed away, she was out stirring a cauldron of herbs and making tea, whatever, and some of the kids saw her and they thought she was making a potion, so they ran all over the place, and that's the day that she died, in the same manner, peacefully. She passed away. So they were quite notorious, I guess. And Daniel, because he did not belong to the church that stood here, his service was outside because they would not let him have the funeral service inside because he wasn't a member. So here he lies, Dr. Daniel Roberts.
And now he's actually believed to be the spirit that people are reporting up there, seeing a white ball of light moving along the roadside, and in some instances a lantern that's been seen or a man carrying a lantern walking down the middle of the road.
Yes.
So is the haunting related to where the accident occurred then?
That's what I believe, because it was up on Starr Hill, and that's where the occurrences happen. So I believe that's the ghost of Daniel Roberts.
So what do you believe that he actually practiced? Was it some sort of herbalism that we would know today?
It's probably, I would say, maybe holistic medicine. Maybe he was a pioneer in holistic medicine. Who knows? But he was very well read, a very smart man. And the people loved him. People came from all around to his funerals and paid homage to him and that sort of thing. And they were very good to Jane too, but the witchcraft and the sorcery or whatever they thought, because they were a very superstitious people. So if they did see occurrences like that, they would say, oh gosh, it must be the ghost, or she's witch doctor doing it again. But still they came and he healed them or did whatever he had to do for them.
When you say they're very superstitious, do you think that was just the time, the era, or was it the Welsh heritage?
I believe it's part of both. The Welsh heritage certainly came with a lot of that from Wales, because this is about the time that the Welsh started coming to this area, and so they brought some of that with them, Celtic, if you will. So I think you would find that with United Kingdom, Scottish and Welsh and Irish and English, of course. The prominence of his time in Steuben Township was Dr. Daniel Roberts, Carnarvonshire, Wales, in 1775, and in his early years was a student of the famous Lampeter School, one of the most noted preparatory schools in the Principality. He came to this country in 1818, landing at New York and thence directly to Steuben, where he located about a quarter of a mile north of Tycock Corners on the west side of the highway. His reputation for communion and fellowship with the powers of darkness had preceded his arrival in America. Many and marvelous are the stories told of this man, some of them rivaling the Arabian Night tales or those of Salem witchcraft days. If he in his day was averse to the opinion entertained by many of his superstitious fellow countrymen regarding his possession of supernatural powers, he at least took no steps to controvert that belief. In reality, he may not have been made aware of the full measure of mysterious happenings that were attributed to him as wrought through his influence with those invisible agents alleged to be under his control. But certainly, on one occasion, as we shall show, he directly asserted that he possessed such powers, and there were those with whom he was in close relation who were wont to recount many wonderful things that he was thought to have been brought to pass. This was published in the North Country Pictorial on October 18th, 1990, and it's entitled The Starr Hill Ghost. Is it the ghost of the Welsh doctor who practiced at the bottom of the hill in the early 1800s? Is it some electrical phenomenon arising from the Air Force installation at the top of the hill? Or the 765 kV line just over the crest? Or is it car lights on some far distant road? Who or what is the Starr Hill ghost? Anyone who has seen it, and there are many, will agree something is there on that remote hill in the town of Steuben. Just the experience of sitting there in the dark, listening to the wind in the trees, is enough to raise the hair on the necks of the faint-hearted. And isn't that half the fun of a ghost hunt anyway? Those who are lucky enough to have been on the hill when the apparition decides it was time to put on a show have varied stories. Just at twilight, some have seen a large ball of light beside their car traveling up or down the hill. A meteor, the doubting will say. Meteors do not reappear in the same location within a few days and do not move horizontally. Lights across the way? Car lights do not bounce like a huge ball or start out like a tiny dot and move at a tremendous speed toward the viewer, becoming larger and larger, then suddenly disappear. And how about the night it appeared as a lantern being carried up the middle of the road by a person wearing boots, except that the person had no head or body, only an arm and boots? Someone playing a trick, perhaps? Then where did he go when the car headlights were suddenly turned on? Who has seen this ghost? A bunch of spaced-out druggies on a bad trip? No. Actually, most of the sightings are by relatively normal, sober adults who were skeptical too until they saw it. Many years ago, an apparition appeared to two young girls in the area. As they say in a gravel bed talking, an old man with a long white beard dressed in clothes of another era drifted down the nearly 90-degree sides of the hill. The mother of one of the girls said their state of terror upon arriving home left no doubt that they had not made up the story. For those who really believe, or want to, that the Starr Hill ghost exists, one theory is based on the reputation of Dr. Daniel Roberts, who practiced medicine and some say witchcraft at his home less than a mile from where the sightings have been made. One final note. Those who frequent the hill may also find that cars don't always start or lights don't come on when it's time to end the evening of ghost hunting.
Kate here with an eyewitness to the ghost of Starr Hill. Tell me about your experience.
Well, I had an encounter with Dr. Roberts, well, what I believe is Dr. Roberts, when I was in high school. For Halloween, one of my friends and I decided that it would be a cool idea to see if we could find him. So what we did is we started driving down Starr Hill Road. We started at the top, and we thought, because the folklore is that he comes and helps people who are in need, we thought if we made ourselves look as needy as possible, maybe he would show up. So we started going probably about 20 miles an hour down the road, just slowly crawling, and through the windshield we saw this bright ball of light out by the side of the road, really close to the road. It was probably a quarter of a mile ahead of us, and it was far enough away. So we kind of looked at each other like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And by the time we looked back, it was gone. So we drove down to about where we thought we'd seen him. We looked around everywhere. None of the houses had their lights on. There weren't any lights by the road, and it was a bright light. I mean, it was blinding almost. So that was our encounter. But I've known other people who've also said that they've heard hoof beats. They've seen the light. I mean, it's a big thing in the area as people going and looking for Dr. Roberts.
So we are here along the overlook on Starr Hill Road. Is there a particular spot that you know of that is more active than others, or is there a spot where the activity really seems to be centered around?
It seems like most of the activity, from what I've heard and my own experiences, it seems like it's just all along Starr Hill Road, more towards the top, but it just seems like all over. But the overlook here, on a nice day, which today is not, you can see all the way out to Lake Delta. So this is kind of a popular spot for people to hang out, and it's also adjacent to Penn Mountain Cemetery. Penn Mountain is over in those woods over there, so I mean, this has kind of gotten a reputation as potentially haunted as well.
Well, Phil, we've heard some interesting stories from our historian, from some eyewitnesses. I've got a theory that I want to throw past you. So here along Starr Hill Road, just down from the Steuben Memorial, near Penn Mountain Cemetery, near Penn Mountain, there is also a kind of secret old military installation that was connected to Griffiths. Is there any thought in your mind that something that was happening at that military installation could be a pliable explanation?
Well, it is a secret installation that they were running up here. We do know now that there is a weather station that's attached to it. There is a lot of energy that their typical experience put out. It may have done something. There's been causes for like ball lightning and stuff to be caused by high tension lines. I can only imagine what would occur if you have intense microwave transmissions and other stray RF radio frequencies and stuff like that in the environment. They could create these false ghosts.
An interesting theory to consider. That was a great story. Glad we found the doctor and some really interesting stories about him.
Very interesting stories. They refer to him as the Witch Doctor, but he may have actually been one of the pioneers in holistic medicine, using herbs and poultices to heal things, and it's just legends take over.
Legends take over. If you're on Starr Hill on a dark and stormy night and you need help, you never know what you might find. Hey, if you're enjoying the haunts and legends of New York, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe.
And in the comments below, let us know where else we should go.